Hello. Uh, I have Thank You for Arguing, Chapter 12, Persuade on Your Terms, also known as Framing. And I'm Robert Diez. So let's get started. So, first things first, what is framing? So, a frame, when you're talking about rhetorical arguments, it's the bounds of an argument. So, more or less, what the argument's about, you always want to think about keeping an argument in frame. But by using framing to your advantage, you can gain the upper hand in an argument, and you can even stop an opponent from blocking you in. So it kind of throws them off, and suddenly you're in the lead. So, as I just said, frames can be shifted. Um, you can use commonplace words. You can redefine an argument. You can define an argument in the way that you want it to be defined. And you can even redefine a word specifically that they use against them. So here's a little example that is actually used in the book, and person A would say, "Why are you so selfish and piggish?" And person B would respond with, "Did something happen to you today? What's wrong?" So now it's not really about the selfishness and piggishness of person B, it's about person A's day and what they went through. It's about their mental state. So, as I previously mentioned, one of the ways of framing is the use of commonplace words. So, commonplace words are words that already carry specific connotations, so everyone knows them. They elicit an emotional response. You already know that when you say, "Oh, let's rally together," everyone's gonna get really excited and they're gonna want to join a force together. So, if a rhetorician knows this, they can use commonplace words heavily, but only when they're persuading, because as an attacker, it won't really have the same effect. So, also known as buzzwords, which you've probably heard them been referred to as buzzwords um, more often in politics. So, they rally support for a cause with them, and they don't even really have to back up any other points because these words elicit such a strong emotional response. So people will overlook any lack of evidence. So here's politician A, and he says, "It's a matter of coming together as a team and changing the paradigm as a whole." Now, if you look at that in a vacuum, it really doesn't mean anything, and it just doesn't make sense. But if he closed a speech with this, the audience would leave with the feeling of like, yeah, this man wants some change. Like, we need to follow him. So, yeah, so that's one manner. So, the next one that I mentioned is defining an argument. So, an argument can be summarized or defined in a certain way to prove one point. Um, this builds off the famous saying, there are two sides to every story. So, while one person may argue, "Oh, this is the argument," but the other person can say, "No, actually, this is the argument." And it's best to define an argument very broadly. The way that he defines it in the book is the pro-choice argument. Um, you want to do it broad because you want to appeal to as many people as you possibly can. So every rhetoric has audience members that are on either side of the argument and have no chance of switching over. Um, there was like an iReady passage in sixth grade that actually talked about this, and it's the goal of like a rhetorician to bring the middle side over, not the people that are already convinced of their point. There's not much you can do to bring them over. It's the people, the centrists, that you got to worry about. So here we have person A saying, "Well, everyone deserves a chance to live." It's about a culture of life with the pro-choice argument here. Person B is kind of redefining the argument, or not redefining it, but defining it, because we'll go into redefining later. So person B is saying abortion should be safe, legal, and rare. So person B opposes abortion in their argument. They're saying it should be rare. But what they do is they deem it unnecessary. So maybe there's some people in the middle that say, "Hey, I don't think abortions are necessary, but I can understand where they might be vital in some cases." Um, So person B agrees with those centrists, saying, hey, they should be rare, but they should be safe and legal also. They've also kind of taken the position where they've solved the argument, because suddenly, like, oh, here's a solution. Like, yes, I'll concede something to you, even though it's not really a concession of anything. So yeah, I'll concede. Abortion should be rare, but they should also be safe and legal when they're necessary to happen. So that's kind of the middle ground, if you will. So then there's also the redefining of a word. So this is just kind of like, I find this to be nitpicking, but it is also like a great tactic in an argument. So you can accept, change, or redefine a word. This gives the notion of like agreeing with an opponent, but really you're turning the rhetoric in their favor. So this is like a common theme between framing. Often you'll find yourself like open parentheses, agreeing, but it's not really like an agreement. You're just conceding a little bit so that you can shift the argument in your favor. And it's always important to redefine it in a connotative meaning of word, and you don't want to make it literal. And it kind of counters labeling, because you can change the label's definition. So often, somebody will say something that you can take very literally. As we have in an example A, your child is simply lazy. You can take that literally like, hey, my child doesn't do work. Or person B has 3 different ways that they can respond to this. They can say, true, how do we change that? They're accepting the definition and changing the argument, looking forward to the future. What can we do to change the laziness? And then he can change the definition. No, not even the definition. He changes the word itself. So he can say, he's not lazy, he's just bored. This kind of disagrees. This is one of the least strong ones, because it just gives the opponent more talking points. And then what he does, which is what Heinrichs actually brought up, was the redefining. So if lazy means playing games all day with dedication, then sure. So person A wanted to make lazy seem like a bad thing, have a negative connotation. Then person B turns it around and introduces dedication to the definition of lazy, which is kind of like, it goes against the word's original definition, but he's kind of shifted the argument in his favor. So on that same note, you can also redefine an entire argument. So you can change the foundation of an argument and catch your opponent off guard, and give yourself a fighting chance. So the way Heinrichs actually described this was, he had a situation where he had not prepared for an argument at all. He had like 30 minutes, and he was thinking to himself, wow, my opponent has probably prepared a lot. He needs to change the argument so that all of the opponent's preparation and talking points were completely invalid now. And that way it was fair ground. They both had been equally as unprepared as each other. So yeah, as I said, the opposing side is very comfortable in one domain. And if you redefine, suddenly the domain has changed, and now they're not so comfortable, and they have to improvise and come up on the fly. And that gives you a better fighting chance. So person A is like, oh, I prepared a lengthy speech on a professional-looking airplane pamphlet. I hope I do really well. And little do they know that person B will be changing the argument to, oh, pamphlets shouldn't be professional. They should be fun and humorous, because we want our audience to feel like they're enjoying their pamphlet. Suddenly person A is like, wow, oh my god, like I just prepared an entire portfolio, like a ton of talking points on the professional looking pamphlet, and this guy's just completely thrown that out of the mix. So what do I do? So next, I would just like to summarize basically everything I said. Framing is used every day. There are arguments often when we don't even notice. We don't even call it framing. There's several techniques, and through them, the polemic can ensure they win any argument, albeit by changing said argument altogether. So maybe somebody will come to you with an argument, and by the end of the argument, it's not even the same thing that you guys started with. So, as you recall, using commonplace words to favor the argument, defining the issue as broadly as you can, using the opposition's words to favor you by redefining them, using contrasting terms to redefine the issue at hand. Yep. Thank you.